Move to economy. First class isn't meant for kids like you, Patricia snapped, her shadow looming over the two black twins. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, unaware that the man they would soon hear on speakerphone wasn't just their father. He was the executive who had the power to shut down the entire plane. Jasmine Mitchell looked up from her copy of The Hate You, give her 13-year-old face scrunching in confusion. What? Beside her, Jordan clutched a worn teddy bear, Mr. Buttons tighter to her chest. Not because she was babyish, but because Dr. Kim said comfort objects were perfectly fine when anxiety hit. And right now, her chest felt tight with that familiar flutter. I said, "You need to move." Patricia repeated slower this time, as if speaking to toddlers instead of teenagers. "These seats are, there's been a mix-up, but we have our tickets," Jasmine said, fumbling for the boarding passes. "Seat 2A and 2B, our dad bought them like 3 weeks ago." Patricia glanced at her tablet where a message from her supervisor glowed. Final warning, premium cabin satisfaction scores must improve this quarter or demotion to regional routes. She'd already had 2 complaints this month from first-class passengers about inappropriate seat assignments. She couldn't afford another. Sometimes the system makes errors, Patricia said, her voice carrying that particular tone adults used when they'd already decided something and were just going through the motions of explanation. "I think you'll be more comfortable in row 32. "What errors?" Jordan's voice came out as barely a whisper. She did that thing where she started rocking slightly, her tell that anxiety was creeping up. "We didn't. We just sat down from seat 1C. Maria Santos looked up from her crossword puzzle. The 58-year-old retired teacher had been watching since the girls boarded, polite, quiet, well-dressed in their Preston Academy uniforms. Something about Patricia's stance, the way she positioned her body to loom over the seated children, set off every protective instinct Maria had developed over 30 years of teaching. "Excuse me," Maria said, setting down her pencil. "What exactly is the problem?" "These young ladies have been nothing but quiet." Patricia's hand moved to the gold wings on her uniform, adjusting them a nervous habit. "Ma'am, this is an airline matter that needs to be handled according to protocol." In seat 3A, Robert Hayes glanced up from his laptop where a merger contract demanded his attention. He'd been that guy before, the one who minded his own business, who didn't get involved. But something about 2 kids being confronted by an adult in uniform made him pause. His daughter Emma was about their age. "Our dad always buys us first class when we fly to see him," Jasmine said, trying to sound confident, but her voice wavering. "He says it's safer, and Jordan gets anxious on planes. So your dad?" Patricia interrupted. And there was something in the way she said it, a subtle emphasis, a slight lift of her eyebrow. "And what does your dad do that he can afford? First-class tickets?" The question hung in the air like a bad smell. In seat 5B, Isabella Rodriguez, building her career as a travel blogger with 50,000 followers, quietly activated her phone's camera. She'd seen enough discrimination in airports to recognize it instantly, but witnessing it directed at children made her stomach turn. "Why does that matter?" Jasmine asked, finding a small spark of defiance. Even as Jordan's hand found hers under the armrest, Patricia's tablet chimed another message from the cockpit about departure time. She ignored it. "Look, I'm trying to help you avoid embarrassment. Sometimes upgrades go through that shouldn't. It's better to handle it quietly now than make a scene later." What embarrassment? Maria Santos stood up, all 5 or 2 of her, radiating the authority of someone who'd faced down hundreds of unruly teenagers and wasn't intimidated by anyone. "The only embarrassing thing happening here is you harassing 2 children." Marcus Coleman, a junior flight attendant just 6 months into the job, appeared at Patricia's shoulder. His face showed clear discomfort. He knew something was wrong here, but he was still on probation. One complaint from Patricia would end his career before it really began. "Patricia," he said quietly, "maybe we should check with Marcus. Please help these young ladies gather their belongings." Patricia cut him off her tone, making it clear this wasn't a request. "Row 32 has availability." That's when Jordan started crying. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but the quiet kind where tears just rolled down her cheeks while she tried to shrink into herself, making herself as small as possible. Hey! Jasmine turned to her sister, forgetting about Patricia entirely. It's okay. Remember what Dr. Kim said? When people are mean, it's about them, not us. But I don't want to move, Jordan whispered. I finally wasn't scared because we got the good seats and now my sister has anxiety disorder, Jasmine said to Patricia, her protective anger overriding her own fear. You're literally triggering her. Stop it. Robert Hayes closed his laptop with a decisive snap that drew attention. Excuse me, but I'd like to understand what's happening here. What specific issue requires these young ladies to move? Patricia turned to him, her composure starting to crack around the edges. Sir, passenger comfort is our priority, whose comfort Isabella had given up pretending not to film. Because from where I'm sitting, the only uncomfortable people are these two kids you're hassling. This is not a democracy. Patricia snapped, her professional mask slipping. I have the authority to reseat passengers when necessary for the safety and comfort of safety. The word triggered something in the cabin. Several passengers turned to look now. Captain Thomas Wright emerged from the cockpit looking tired already, even though they hadn't taken off. The 52-year-old pilot had dealt with too many passenger disputes over the years. He took in the scene, Patricia standing rigid. Two girls clearly distressed, half the first-class cabin now watching. What's the situation? Patricia, Captain, these two passengers need to be reseated. There have been concerns raised. Captain Wright looked at the girls, their school uniforms, the tears on Jordan's face, the teddy bear she was clutching like a lifeline. His expression flickered with something, doubt maybe. But 27 years of crew solidarity was hard to break. If Patricia says there's an issue, he began trailing off as he saw the recording phones. But there isn't an issue, Jasmine's voice cracked. We're just sitting here. We haven't done anything wrong. That's when she remembered what her father always said. If anyone ever treats you unfairly, especially on an airplane, you call me immediately. Don't argue. Don't fight. Just call me. Her hand moved to her phone in her pocket. You can't use phones during Patricia started. We haven't left the gate, Isabella interrupted. They have every right to call their parents. Patricia laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Oh, by all means, call Daddy. I'm sure he'll be very interested to hear that you're being disruptive and refusing to follow crew instructions. Jasmine pulled out her phone with shaking fingers, scrolling to the contact labeled, Dad, emergency only. Jordan saw what she was doing. Jazz, he said, only if it's really bad, Jordan whispered through her tears. Jordan, this is really bad, Jasmine whispered back, hitting the call button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered, warm, concerned. Immediate princess, you should be in the air by now. What's wrong, Daddy? Jasmine's voice broke on the word, 13 years of trying to be strong, crumbling in an instant. The flight attendant lady is being really mean, and Jordan's crying, and then she says, we have to move and slow down, baby. Take a breath. Marcus Mitchell's voice shifted from casual warmth to sharp focus. Are you and Jordan safe? Is anyone touching you? No, but Daddy. She keeps saying, we don't belong here. And Patricia rolled her eyes dramatically, making sure other passengers could see her reaction. Sir, she called out loudly, ensuring the phone would pick up her voice. Your daughters are being disruptive and refusing to follow crew member instructions. This is becoming a safety issue. Is that her? Marcus's voice changed, carrying an edge Jasmine had only heard once before, when a teacher had unfairly accused Jordan of cheating. Put me on speaker, Jasmine, right now. Jasmine's fingers fumbled with the phone. She nearly dropped it. Her hands were shaking so badly. Finally, she found the speaker button, and her father's voice emerged into the space between the seats. This is Marcus Mitchell. I need to know exactly what's happening with my daughters. Patricia straightened her spine, assuming she was dealing with some middle management type who thought his position meant something at $30,000 left. Mr. Mitchell, your daughters are refusing to comply with crew instructions regarding a seating issue. What seating issue? They have assigned seats that I purchased 3 weeks ago. Sir, we've received complaints about passenger comfort from whom Marcus's voice was steady controlled, but there was something underneath it. I want specific seat numbers. Which passengers complained I don't have to provide that information to? You're making accusations against my minor daughters. Actually, yes, you do. What specific behavioral issue have they exhibited? Marcus Coleman shifted uncomfortably beside Patricia. He'd studied the regulations and training. The father was right. Specific complaints require documentation. Patricia was making this up as she went along, and everyone was starting to realize it. Dad Jordan spoke up suddenly, her voice small and shaky. She asked, "What you do for work?" Like she didn't believe we could afford these seats. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was dangerously quiet. She asked about my employment. She said our tickets were probably a mistake. Jasmine added, finding strength in her father's anger, or an upgrade that shouldn't have gone through. Maria Santos couldn't stay silent any longer. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Maria Santos, a fellow passenger. I want you to know that your daughters have been perfect angels." They were reading quietly until Ms. Brennan approached them. "Thank you, Mrs. Santos. Are you recording this?" "I am now." Robert Hayes called out, his phone clearly visible. "Robert Hayes, attorney. I'm documenting what appears to be discrimination against minors." Patricia's face flushed red. The situation was spiraling. "This is ridiculous. Captain Wright, I need backup here." Captain Wright looked between Patricia and the growing number of passengers who were now openly recording. His instincts told him something was very wrong here, but Patricia had seniority, had been flying longer than he had. "Mr. Mitchell," he said, addressing the phone, "I'm Captain Wright. We need to resolve this situation quickly. Captain, are you supporting the removal of my daughters from their legally purchased seats based on fabricated complaints?" "I'm saying that my crew needs to maintain order." "Your crew needs to follow federal anti-discrimination laws," Marcus interrupted, "which they're currently violating." Isabella Rodriguez had moved into the aisle for a better angle, her live stream showing to her followers. The viewer count was climbing 500. 1,400. Comments were starting to pour in. "Making threats against airline personnel is a federal offense," Patricia said, grasping for any authority she could find. "I haven't made any threats. I've asked questions that you're legally required to answer. Now, what did my daughters do wrong?" The complaints were about Patricia fumbled, her mind racing. There were concerns about hygiene. The cabin went silent. Even the ambient noise seemed to stop. Jordan made a sound like she'd been punched. She looked down at herself. Her clean uniform, her neat braids that Mom had done fresh that morning. Her face crumbled completely. "You said we smell bad." Jasmine's voice was hollow with disbelief. Maria Santos shot to her feet. "That is a bald-faced lie. These children are immaculate." She really said that. Marcus's voice had gone quiet again, but it was the quiet before a storm. "She used that specific stereotype against my daughters." "I didn't say they smelled." Patricia backpedaled frantically. "I said passengers had complained." "Which passengers?" Robert Hayes demanded. "Because I'm sitting here and no one has complained about anything except your behavior." Isabella panned her camera across the first-class cabin. "For my viewers, we're at 3,000 now. Not a single passenger is supporting the flight attendant's claims." Marcus Coleman finally found his courage. Or maybe his conscience finally outweighed his fear for his job. "Patricia," he said quietly, "there haven't been any complaints." "You know there haven't been." Patricia whirled on him. "Marcus, you're new. You don't understand." "I understand discrimination when I see it," he replied, his voice getting stronger. "And I understand that what you're doing to these children is wrong, Captain Wright." Marcus Mitchell's voice cut through the chaos. "I need you to listen very carefully. You have about 15 minutes before this becomes a federal incident. My daughters are minors traveling under your airline's care. They've been racially profiled, falsely accused, and traumatized by your senior flight attendant." "Sir, that's a serious accusation," Daddy Jasmine interrupted her voice. "Breaking. I want to go home. Can you come get us?" "Please listen to me, both of you." Marcus said, his voice shifting to the tone he used when he really needed them to pay attention. "You stay in those seats. Don't move unless someone physically touches you. And if that happens, you scream." "Jordan, baby, are you okay?" "No," Jordan said honestly, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared and embarrassed and everyone's looking at us and I just wanted to read my book and I know, sweetheart. I know this isn't your fault. None of this is your fault." Patricia laughed harshly. "Oh, please. What are you going to do? Call customer service. File a complaint. I've been doing this for 18 years, Miss Brennan. Marcus's voice cut her off in about 10 minutes. You're going to wish it had only been customer service? Captain Wright's phone buzzed. He looked at it, frowned. It was from dispatch social media situation developing on your flight. Please confirm all passengers are secure and no incidents occurring. He looked at the multiple passengers filming at Patricia's defensive stance at the two crying children. His stomach sank. Mr. Mitchell, Captain Wright said carefully, can you tell me your position for the record? There was a pause. Then I'm the Chief Operations Officer of Atlas Airlines. I acquired controlling interest 6 months ago. The words landed like a bomb. Patricia's face went white, then red, then white again. Her tablet slipped from nerveless fingers, clattering to the floor. No, she whispered. You're not. You can't be. Ms. Brennan Marcus continued his voice, now carrying the full weight of corporate authority. I've spent the last 6 months reviewing every aspect of this airline's operations, including employee conduct records, including yours. 23 complaints, 14 involving passengers of color. Captain Wright took a physical step back from Patricia. Is this true? Patricia looked around wildly, like she was searching for an escape route that didn't exist. Daddy Jordan's voice was small. Are you really coming to get us? I'm already on my way, baby, Marcus said, and they could hear car sounds in the background. I left the office the second Jasmine called. I'll be there in 15 minutes. You're coming here? Jasmine asked, hope breaking through her tears. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. Captain Wright, you're going to hold that plane at the gate until I arrive. Sir, we have a schedule. Your schedule became irrelevant when your crew discriminated against my children. Hold the plane. Isabella's live stream viewer count had jumped to 8,000. Comments were flooding in faster than anyone could read. The Norwegian airline discrimination was already trending. Patricia seemed to physically shrink. I didn't know. How could I know who you were? That's exactly the problem, Robert Hayes said, standing up. You shouldn't need to know who their father is to treat them with basic human dignity. I didn't know. Patricia repeated, her voice hollow as she stared at the phone in Jasmine's hand like it might bite her. You never said they never said what Marcus Mitchell's voice was. Ice over steel. Said, please don't discriminate against us because our father owns the airline. Is that what my 13-year-old daughters should have had to say? Captain Wright's phone was buzzing continuously now. He glanced at it. Dispatch crew scheduling corporate communications. The texts were getting increasingly urgent. Confirm situation immediately. Then media relations requesting immediate callback. Then board member Elizabeth Hartford needs direct contact ASAP. Captain Wright Marcus continued. Are you beginning to understand the situation you're in? Wright swallowed hard. Mr. Mitchell, sir, I had no idea who your daughters were, and that's supposed to make it better. Marcus's voice cracked slightly, the first sign of his emotional control slipping. If they were just regular kids, it would be okay to treat them like this. No, sir, that's not what I... Then what, Captain? Because from where I'm sitting, racing to the airport, because my daughters are crying, it sounds like you think discrimination is acceptable as long as the victims don't have powerful parents. Jordan had curled into herself, clutching Mr. Button so tightly that her knuckles were white. Jasmine had her arm around her sister, but she was trembling too. The adrenaline that had kept her strong was fading, replaced by the crushing weight of what had happened. Maria Santos couldn't stand it anymore. She moved across the aisle, gesturing to the empty seat. May I? She asked the girls gently. Jordan nodded and Maria sat down, her presence somehow making the space feel safer. You're being so brave, she said softly. Both of you. Patricia suddenly lurched forward, reaching for her tablet on the floor. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely pick it up. I need to check something, she muttered, scrolling frantically through employee databases. Then she found it. Marcus Mitchell, Chief Operations Officer. The photo showed a tall black man in an expensive suit, and when Patricia looked at the twins, she could see it the same eyes, the same determined set of the jaw in Jasmine, the same gentle expression in Jordan. Oh God, Patricia breathed. Oh God, what have I done? What you've done? Marcus said, his voice carrying to every corner of the first-class cabin, is what you've been doing for years. The only difference is that today you did it to the wrong children. Marcus Coleman stepped forward, finding his voice. Mr. Mitchell, I should have stopped this immediately. I knew it was wrong, but I was scared for my job. I'm so sorry. At least you're admitting it, Marcus replied. That's more than Miss Brennan has done. I was following protocol, Patricia said desperately, but even she didn't believe it anymore. What protocol? Marcus demanded. Show me the protocol that says to harass children. Show me the rule that says black kids don't belong in first class. Isabella's live stream had hit 12,000 viewers. Someone in the comments had identified Marcus Mitchell, and the corporate implications were going viral. Atlas Airlines' stock price would take a hit within the hour. Captain Wright's phone rang. Not a text this time, but an actual call. He looked at the caller ID and his face went pale. It's the CEO, he said quietly. That would be David Chen, Marcus said. Tell him I'll speak with him after I get my daughter safe. Wright answered the phone with a shaking hand. Yes, Mr. Chen. Yes, sir. He's on speaker with the passengers. Yes, sir. I understand. He paused, listening, his face growing paler by the second. Yes, sir, immediately. He hung up and looked at Patricia. Mr. Chen wants you to know that you're suspended immediately. Pending investigation. Suspended? Patricia's voice went up an octave. But no, Marcus interrupted. Not suspended. Terminated. Ms. Brennan, your employment with Atlas Airlines ends the moment I board that plane. You can't just, I can and I will. 23 complaints. Monsieur Brennan, I've been reviewing them. The Asian family you had removed from first class last month claiming suspicious behavior. The Hispanic businessman you reseated 2 weeks ago because he looked uncomfortable in his suit. The elderly black couple you told would be happier in economy. You've been doing this for years. The cabin was dead silent, except for Jordan's quiet sniffles. Even the usual airplane noises seemed muted. But those where I was just, Patricia stammered. You were just what? Following your instincts. Those instincts are racist, Miss Brennan, and they've been hurting people for 18 years. Robert Hayes spoke up. Mr. Mitchell, I've been recording everything. This will be useful for the civil rights lawsuit. There won't be a lawsuit, Marcus said, surprising everyone. My daughters are going to decide how to handle this. Jasmine Jordan, what do you want? The twins looked at each other. Jordan whispered something to Jasmine, who whispered back. Finally, Jasmine spoke. We just want it to stop. We don't want other kids to go through this. You hear that Marcus's voice carried a father's pride through his anger. My 13-year-old daughters are thinking about other children while you're worried about your job. Through the windows, passengers could see vehicles approaching on the tarmac airport security, but also a black SUV moving fast, too fast for the normal tarmac speeds. He's here, Captain Wright said unnecessarily. They heard Marcus before they saw him. Rapid footsteps on the jet bridge. Multiple voices trying to slow him down, then his voice cutting through move. Those are my daughters. He appeared in the doorway, and the first thing everyone noticed was that the polished executive from the corporate photo was gone. This was a father tie, askew shirt partially untucked from running eyes wild with a combination of fury and fear. He took in the scene in one glance. Patricia backed against the galley. Captain Wright looking sick, various passengers recording, and his daughters. His composure cracked completely when he saw them. Jordan's face was blotchy from crying, her anxiety clearly spiraling. Jasmine was trying to be strong, but tears were streaming down her face. My babies, he breathed, crossing the distance in 3 strides. He dropped to his knees in the aisle, his expensive suit be damned, and pulled both girls into his arms. Jordan broke down completely, sobbing into his shoulder. Jasmine tried to hold it together for another second before she too collapsed into her father's embrace. We didn't do anything wrong, Jordan kept saying. We were just reading. We were just reading our books. I know, baby, I know. Marcus's voice was thick. He pulled back just enough to look at their faces, his hands gentle as he wiped their tears. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Then he stood, keeping one arm around each daughter, and turned to Patricia. The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. Miss Brennan, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Look at them. Look at what you did. Patricia couldn't meet his eyes. She stared at the floor, her whole body trembling. They're 13 years old, Marcus continued. 13. They were excited about this flight. Jordan was proud that she wasn't scared because they had good seats where she could see everything. Jasmine had a new book she'd been saving to read. They were just two kids going to see their dad, and you turned it into a trauma they'll carry forever. I'm sorry, Patricia whispered. No, Marcus said firmly. You're not sorry. You're scared. There's a difference. Captain Wright stepped forward cautiously. Mr. Mitchell, perhaps we should handle the rest of this privately. Marcus turned on him and Wright actually stepped back. Privately? Like the private humiliation my daughters faced. Like the private trauma you allowed to happen. No, Captain, this stays public. Everyone needs to see this, Daddy Jasmine said quietly. Can we go, please? Marcus looked down at his daughters and his expression softened. Yes, sweetheart. We're leaving. He looked back at Wright. This plane doesn't move until I say so. We're going to handle this properly. Sir, the passengers can wait, Robert Hayes called out. I think we'd all rather see justice than make our connections. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the cabin. Isabella's live stream showed 18,000 viewers now and climbing. Marcus pulled out his phone, dialing a number. Sarah, yes, I'm on the plane. I need you and the entire senior management team here now. No, not in an hour. Now. He hung up and addressed the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for what you've witnessed. This is not what Atlas Airlines represents, or at least it's not what it's going to represent going forward. Then he looked at Patricia again. Security will escort you off this aircraft. You'll be taken to the administrative offices where you'll be formally terminated. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you. You are banned from all Atlas Airlines property, effective immediately. 18 years, Patricia said, her voice broken. I gave this company 18 years. And for 18 years, you've been hurting people who look like my daughters, Marcus replied. How many kids like them did you humiliate? How many families did you separate? How many people did you make feel like they didn't belong? Patricia had no answer. Or maybe she did, but couldn't bear to say it out loud. Two security officers appeared in the doorway. Mr. Mitchell, please escort Ms. Brennan off the aircraft, Marcus said. He then turned to Captain Wright. Captain, you have a choice to make. You can face a full investigation for enabling discrimination, or you can accept a suspension and retraining. What's it going to be? Wright looked at the twins, still clinging to their father, and something in his expression shifted. I failed them, he said quietly. I saw what was happening and I didn't stop it. I'll take whatever consequences you think are appropriate. 60-day suspension, mandatory bias training, and you'll speak at our crew meetings about what happened here today. Yes, sir. Marcus Coleman stepped forward. Mr. Mitchell, what about me? Marcus studied him for a moment. You tried to speak up. Too late, but you tried. You're promoted to senior flight attendant, but you'll also be our designated passenger advocate. Your job is to prevent this from ever happening again. I won't let you down, sir, or any passenger. As Patricia was led away, she stopped at the door and turned back. I have 3 kids of my own, she said to no one in particular. Then you should be ashamed, Maria Santos said quietly but firmly. You're a mother and you did this to someone else's babies. Patricia was gone, but her absence left something toxic in the air, like smoke after a fire. Marcus Mitchell stood with his daughters, feeling Jordan trembling against his side and Jasmine's rigid control. That meant she was barely holding it together. Mr. Mitchell, a voice came from the jet bridge. Sarah Thompson, VP of Customer Relations, appeared with 2 other executives. They looked harried, having clearly rushed from the corporate offices. We came as quickly as we could. Sarah, I want you to see this, Marcus said, his voice rough. I want all of you to see what our policies, our culture has allowed. He guided his daughters to sit down, kneeling in front of them again. Jordan was doing that thing where she pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop crying, but unable to. Jasmine stared straight ahead, not really seeing anything. Jordan, baby, breathe with me, Marcus said softly. In through your nose, hold it. Out through your mouth. I can't, Jordan gasped. Everyone's watching, and I can't breathe. And yes, you can. Remember what Dr. Kim taught us. When the anxiety gets big, we make our world small. Just look at me. Just me. Sarah Thompson watched this interaction, her face stricken. She had two daughters herself, though they were younger. The thought of them being treated this way. Mr. Mitchell. Captain Wright said quietly, "Should I make an announcement to the passengers?" Marcus stood slowly, keeping his hands on his daughter's shoulders. "Yes, tell them exactly what happened. No corporate speak, no euphemisms. Tell them the truth." Wright picked up the intercom with visibly shaking hands. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Wright. I need to address what you've witnessed today. Two young passengers were subjected to racial discrimination by our crew. I failed to intervene when I should have. This was wrong, and I am deeply sorry." The cabin was silent as he continued. "What happened here today goes against everything. Air travel should be safe, dignified, respectful for all passengers. We failed these children, and I personally failed in my duty as captain of this aircraft." Isabella Rodriguez's live stream comment count was exploding. 25,000 viewers now, with news outlets beginning to pick up the story. Someone had tagged major civil rights organizations, and the shares were multiplying exponentially. Marcus's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID. David Chen, the CEO. "David," he answered, putting it on speaker, but keeping the volume low. "Marcus, I've been briefed on the situation. The board is convening an emergency meeting. What do you need?" "I need systematic change, David. Not just firing one racist flight attendant. This is bigger than Patricia Brennan." "Agreed. What are you proposing?" Marcus looked at his daughters, then at the passengers watching him. "Complete audit of all discrimination complaints from the past 5 years. Any employee with a pattern like Brennan's gone. No negotiations. No union protection for discrimination. The union will fight that. Then we fight back." "David, my daughters are 13. They were humiliated for existing while black in first class. If the union wants to defend that, let them do it publicly." There was a pause. "You have the board's full support. What else?" "Mandatory anti-discrimination training for all customer-facing employees. Not the standard corporate video reel training led by civil rights experts, and a passenger advocate on every flight. Someone whose job is to protect travelers from discrimination. That's going to cost." "I don't care what it costs," Marcus said sharply. "My daughter's dignity isn't negotiable. No child's dignity is negotiable." Robert Hayes stood up. "Mr. Mitchell, if I may, I've been documenting everything. I specialize in civil rights law. What Atlas Airlines does in the next 48 hours will determine whether this becomes a landmark case or a moment of genuine change." Marcus nodded. "Mr. Hayes, I'd like to hire you as a consultant. Help us get this right." "I'd be honored." Maria Santos had been sitting with the twins, talking to them quietly. She stood now, her teacher instincts fully engaged. "Mr. Mitchell, your daughters need to get somewhere quiet. This environment is too stimulating for trauma processing." Marcus looked down at his girls. Jordan had that 1,000-D stare that meant she was dissociating, and Jasmine was starting to shake adrenaline crash. "We're leaving," he announced. "This plane will remain at the gate until further notice. Any passenger who wants to disembark will receive a full refund and rebooking. Those who stay will receive complimentary flights and our sincere apologies." Mr. Mitchell, Sarah Thompson said the media is already gathering. "How do you want to handle transparently?" Marcus said firmly. "We admit what happened. We take responsibility, and we show the world that Atlas Airlines will not tolerate discrimination. Period." As he prepared to leave with his daughters, several passengers stood up and began applauding. Not for him, but for Jasmine and Jordan. The girls looked surprised, almost confused by the support. An elderly black man in seat 7A called out, "Young ladies, you did nothing wrong. You stood up for yourselves with dignity." That took courage. A white woman with 2 young children added, "My kids saw what happened. They saw you be brave when adults were being cruel. Thank you for that lesson." Jordan whispered something to Jasmine, who related to their father. "She wants to know why people are clapping." Marcus knelt down again. "Because you two showed more grace and strength than any adult here today. Because you stood up to injustice. Because you're heroes even though you shouldn't have had to be. As they walked toward the exit, Marcus Coleman approached. Mr. Mitchell, I just want to say again how sorry I am. I should have intervened immediately. You should have. Marcus agreed. But you eventually did the right thing. That's why you're getting a second chance. Don't waste it. I won't, sir. Never again. Just before they left the plane, Marcus turned back one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed today was wrong. But what happens next, that's what matters. Atlas Airlines will be better. We have to be. The last thing the passengers saw was Marcus Mitchell, one of the most powerful executives in aviation, walking off the plane with his arms around his two daughters, who were still clutching each other like lifelines. In the gate area, chaos awaited. Airport security, airline executives, and now media were gathering, but Marcus ignored them all, focusing only on his daughters. We're going home, he told them. We're going to have hot chocolate. Watch whatever movie you want and forget this day ever happened. Can we really forget it? Jasmine asked, her voice small. Marcus's heart broke a little more. No, baby, we can't forget it, but we can make sure it means something. We can make sure it doesn't happen to other kids. Promise? Jordan asked, looking up at him with eyes still red from crying. I promise, Marcus said. Things are going to change starting today. Behind them on the plane, the remaining passengers were witnessing something unprecedented. Captain Wright was on his phone with every Atlas Airlines flight currently in the air, instructing them to read a statement about discrimination and passenger dignity. Sarah Thompson was coordinating with legal and PR for an immediate press release, taking full responsibility. Robert Hayes was drafting a list of reforms that would become industry standard. And Isabella Rodriguez was ending her live stream with a simple message. You've just witnessed what accountability looks like. Remember this. Demand this every time. The viewer count had topped 35,000 before she ended the stream. Within an hour, clips would be on every major news outlet. By evening, the hashtag #JusticeForJasmine and Jordan would be trending globally. But in that moment, Marcus Mitchell didn't care about any of that. He held his daughters close as they walked through the airport, past the gathering crowd, past the cameras, past everything except the promise he just made. Things would change. They had to. The ride home was quiet, except for Jordan's occasional hiccuping breaths, the aftermath of hard crying. Marcus had tucked both girls into the back of his SUV, Jasmine still holding Jordan's hand. He'd ignored 17 phone calls from board members, 3 from David Chen, and dozens of texts from executives across the airline industry. None of them mattered as much as the two girls in his back seat. Daddy Jordan's voice was tiny. Are we in trouble? Marcus nearly swerved the car. What? No, baby. Why would you think that? Because we caused all those people to be late. The plane can't leave because of us. He pulled over to the side of the road, unable to drive while his heart was breaking. Turning around to face them, he saw Jordan clutching Mr. Buttons, her face still blotchy, while Jasmine stared out the window with that thousandy stare that meant she was processing. Listen to me, both of you. You did nothing wrong, nothing. That plane is delayed because adults failed to act like adults, because someone was cruel to you. You're the victims here, not the cause. But if we had just moved seats, Jasmine started. No, Marcus's voice was firm. If you had moved, Patricia would have done the same thing to another black family next week and the week after that. Sometimes standing up to wrong things causes inconvenience. That doesn't make it less right. His phone rang again. This time it was his ex-wife, Angela. He answered on speaker. Marcus, I saw everything on social media. Are my babies okay? Mom, both girls said simultaneously, and hearing their mother's voice seemed to break something loose in them. Oh, my brave, brave girls, I'm so proud of you. So proud. We didn't do anything brave, Jasmine said. We just sat there and cried. Baby, sometimes just existing in spaces where people don't want you is the bravest thing you can do. You held your ground. You called for help. You didn't let them make you small. It doesn't feel brave, Jordan whispered. It feels scary. I know, honey. Brave things usually do. After they hung up, Marcus drove them home. The house felt like a sanctuary after the chaos of the airport. He made hot chocolate while the girls changed into pajamas, and they all ended up on the couch, the TV on, but none of them really watching. We have therapy tomorrow, Jordan said quietly. Do we have to tell Dr. Kim? We'll tell her together, Marcus promised. She'll help us process this. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Thompson. Press conference scheduled for 6 p.m. Board wants you there, he texted back. No, I'm with my daughters. Issued the statement without me. The response was immediate. The board insists. Marcus turned off his phone. Daddy Jasmine said, What's going to happen to that lady? Patricia Marcus considered how to answer. She lost her job. She won't be able to work for any airline again. Does she really have 3 kids? Jordan asked. I don't know, baby. Probably. That's sad for them, Jordan said, showing that empathy that always amazed him. They didn't do anything wrong either. No, they didn't. But their mom made choices, and choices have consequences. They sat in silence for a while. Then Jasmine asked, Will things really change, or will people just pretend to be better for a while? It was such a mature, cynical question from a 13-year-old that Marcus had to take a moment before answering. I'm going to do everything in my power to make real change, but you're right. Some people will just pretend. That's why we have to stay vigilant. We have to keep demanding better. That evening, while the girls slept finally exhausted from emotional strain, Marcus turned his phone back on to find 147 missed calls and over 300 text messages. The video clips had gone viral. Atlas Airlines stock had dropped 12% before recovering to only 4% down. 3 major civil rights organizations had issued statements. He ignored it all and pulled up his laptop, beginning to draft what would become known as the Mitchell Protocols, a comprehensive anti-discrimination policy that would revolutionize airline industry standards. The next morning, Marcus woke to find both girls in his bed, having crawled in during the night like they used to when they were younger. Jordan was clutching Mr. Buttons, and Jasmine had her arm protectively over her sister, even in sleep. His phone rang. David Chen again. Marcus, we need you at the emergency board meeting. No, you need me to be a father right now. The board can wait. The union is threatening a strike if we fire Patricia without arbitration. Let them strike, Marcus said coldly. Let them go on national television and defend a woman who discriminated against children. See how that plays? Marcus, David, I'm done talking about this today. My daughters have therapy in an hour. That's my priority. The board can either support the changes I've outlined or I'll sell my stake and take this public in a very different way. He hung up. Dr. Kim, their therapist, made space for an emergency session. The girls sat on either side of Marcus in her office, Jordan still clutching Mr. Buttons. Tell me what happened, Dr. Kim said gently. As the girls recounted the story, sometimes talking over each other, sometimes falling silent, Marcus watched the therapist's face carefully control her expression, but he saw the flash of anger in her eyes. How are you feeling now? She asked when they finished. Tired, Jordan said, and confused. Like, why did she hate us? She didn't even know us. She didn't hate you specifically, Dr. Kim explained carefully. She had ideas about people who look like you, wrong ideas, and she let those ideas control her actions. Will it happen again? Jasmine asked. It might, Dr. Kim said honestly. But now you know you can survive it. You know you have people who will fight for you, and you know you did nothing wrong. They spent the rest of the session working through breathing exercises and coping strategies. As they were leaving, Dr. Kim pulled Marcus aside. They're going to need ongoing support. This kind of racial trauma doesn't just disappear. I know, Marcus said. We'll be here every week, longer sessions if needed. And you? How are you handling this? Marcus laughed bitterly. I'm furious. I want to burn down every system that allowed this to happen. That's valid, but your daughters need you stable more than they need you vengeful. He nodded, taking the advice to heart. That afternoon, while the girls were resting, Marcus attended the board meeting virtually. The faces on screen were grim. We've accepted Patricia Brennan's termination. Elizabeth Hartford, the board chair said. The union is filing a grievance, but our legal team says we're on solid ground. What about the audit? Marcus asked. We've identified 17 other employees with similar complaint patterns. Legal is reviewing each case. Fire them all. Marcus, that's going to cause significant disruption. Good. Disruption is what we need. James Hang, another board member, spoke up. The Mitchell protocols you've proposed, they're comprehensive but expensive. Training alone will cost millions. How much did our stock drop yesterday, Marcus asked. 12% at one point. And how much will we lose if this becomes a sustained boycott? If every civil rights organization in the country targets us? If my daughters and I go on every news show and talk about what happened? Silence. Implement the protocols. Elizabeth finally said, all of them. 3 weeks later, Atlas Airlines held a press conference announcing the most comprehensive anti-discrimination policy in aviation history. Every employee would undergo 40 hours of anti-bias training. A passenger advocate would be on every flight. A zero-tolerance policy for discrimination was now in effect. Marcus didn't attend. He was at Jordan's school play watching her perform, despite her anxiety watching Jasmine cheer for her sister. 6 months later, Patricia Brennan sat in a community center in Chicago, speaking to a room of airline employees from various carriers. Her voice shook as she read from her notes. I told myself I wasn't racist. I had black coworkers I was friendly with. But when I saw those 2 girls in first class, my first thought was, they don't belong there. I destroyed 2 children's sense of safety because of my prejudice. In the audience, Marcus Coleman, now a senior training supervisor for Atlas Airlines, watched as Patricia continued her court-mandated community service, speaking at Antibius workshops. I lost everything. Patricia continued, my job, my reputation, my children's respect. My 15-year-old daughter still won't speak to me, and I deserved it all. 1 year later, Jasmine and Jordan Mitchell stood before Congress testifying about passenger rights for minors. Jordan no longer needed Mr. Buttons, though he was in her backpack just in case. We were lucky, Jasmine told the congressional committee. Our dad had power to fight back. But what about kids whose parents don't? They deserve protection too. The Passenger Dignity Act passed 3 months later. 2 years later, Jordan Mitchell boarded a flight to Washington, D.C. for a youth leadership conference. The gate agent, a young woman named Ashley Brennan, checked her in with professional courtesy. Have a safe flight, Ashley said, then added quietly. And thank you, Jordan looked confused. For what? For teaching my mother and me that everyone deserves dignity, especially children. As Jordan walked down the jet bridge, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years of therapy. Complete closure. She took her seat economy by choice, pulled out her book, and read in peace. The plane lifted off into clear skies, carrying 180 passengers who all belonged exactly where they chose to sit. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of the importance of standing up against discrimination, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, a parent, a teacher, or anyone who believes in justice and dignity for all children. Leave a comment below telling us about a time you witnessed someone standing up for what's right or when someone stood up for you. Your stories matter and they inspire others to be brave. Remember, change doesn't happen at 30,000 tonefto. It happens when each of us refuses to stay silent in the face of injustice. Together, we can make sure every child, regardless of their race or background, is treated with the respect they deserve. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video where we share more stories that matter, stories that inspire change, and stories that remind us all of our shared humanity. The